Hello, greetings. Welcome to United States of Africa. This is Daniel Mwambonu, the founder of Global Pan-Africanism Network, and also the founder of United States of Africa Project. United States of Africa Project is an initiative to reunite all people of African descent, advocate for their rights and freedoms, and work towards the realization of United States of Africa. Welcome. If you're joining us, this is Daniel Mwambonu, the founder of Global Pan-Africanism Network, and also the founder of United States of Africa. This is an initiative to work towards political, economical, cultural, and technological liberation of the African nation, total unification of Africa, and decolonization of Africa. And by decolonizing Africa, we mean it starts by decolonizing the mindsets of Africans, and so that Africans can think independently. And this is why we are having educational content that uplifts Africans. United States of Africa strongly condemns the racist attempts by UK scientists trying to use Kenyans as guinea pigs for the COVID vaccine trials. We say no to COVID vaccine trials in Africa. Let them try them to their citizens. UK is one of the worst affected countries. It has more than 138,000 infected cases. They should start from there if they're really serious about finding a vaccine. They should leave Kenya alone. Kenya is no longer a British colony. Gone are the days when the British used to call the shots here in Kenya. We fought for independence. We shed our blood, and our freedom fighters, the Mau Mau fighters, delivered the country back to the citizens, to the Kenyan people. So therefore, United Kingdom must respect the sovereignty of Africa as a nation, and sovereignty of Kenya as a nation. We don't want any more insults. We have had enough. Just recently, the two French scientists were talking about using Africans as guinea pigs. This needs to come to an end. And the only way we can end this medical imperialism, our medical colonialism in Africa, is by coming together, setting up very strong institutions that focus on African healthcare, and all institutions that are needed for African education, so that we produce the kind of skills that we need. We need some kind of leadership which inspires to innovate, to create whatever it needs for its happiness and civilizations, and not just depending on importing stuff from abroad and then celebrating independence, saying you're free, yet many African nations cannot even manufacture simple toothpicks. We import matchsticks from China. This needs to come to an end. As the pandemic hits Africa, we need to take extreme precautions, and let us say it's a personal responsibility. Wash your hands frequently, don't touch your face, don't touch your nose, and don't touch your mouth. And by maintaining high standards of hygiene, we'll be able to defeat this pandemic. Make sure if you're going to public places, you wear masks and you wear it properly, so that you don't infect others, and you also don't get infected. And if you see any signs of COVID-19, rush to the nearest healthcare and contact the emergency numbers that have been provided by different African countries. Let us be ahead of the virus. Since it's an invisible enemy, there's need for us to employ even invisible strategies, and also embrace the African spirituality in combating this invisible enemy. African spirituality is very powerful, the moment we believe that we have defeated this virus, then we'll definitely defeat it. And this is the time to combat all forms of fear-mongering on Africans. This kind of warnings that we have been receiving are meant at psychologically defeating Africans into accepting their vast sins. Every African needs to know about this Western media propaganda that gives the negative impression of Africa, that it is going to be the worst hit, and all kind of nonsense that we have been hearing for the last few months. We Africans need to be very confident of who we are as a nation and as a people. In spite of the fact that cases have risen, we have also the rise in the number of patients who have recovered from COVID-19. If you're joining us now, kindly share the live video and spread the message. We want as many people as possible to be able to get this message so that we get more support for United States of Africa. And by doing this, we'll be bringing this vision closer to the African people and ensuring that we engage more Africans in solving their own problems. Because without Africans being in the front line to solve our own problems, then we are going to run problems with our former colonizers, because they still have the colonial hangover. They think that they can use Africans as guinea pigs for their own benefit. Now is the time for this colonial hangover to come to an end. The British must respect Kenyans, they must respect Africans, and we have to also combat these Western propaganda machineries. This is why we have the United States of Africa media platforms to ensure that we give the right information to Africans and combat this kind of negative publicity about Africa. We believe that we Africans united are capable of already we have seen that Madagascar has found the cure for COVID-19. This is what we now need to use as Africa. They should go on with their vaccine tests. No one will stop them from doing that, but let them not bring their crap into Africa. We have African solutions already, and we congratulate the Madagascar president because he's very proactive. This is the kind of brains that we need in Africa, finding our own solutions to African problems, and not just waiting for some European vaccine somewhere, for an American vaccine somewhere, to come all the way from Europe or America. For Africans, any vaccine made in United States, made in Europe, it will never serve Africa's interests, because it has never been, it was not made by Africans, for Africans, by Africans. So therefore, time for Africans to wake up so that we begin solving our own problems. And this is the right time to unite Africa, advocate for total unification of Africa, the establishment of United States of Africa. This is what Africa needs now. By fighting together and engaging the young people in providing solutions, then we are going to win the war against the COVID-19. At the same time, we are alarmed by the magnitude of racial attacks against Africans in China. We have seen an African being dragged by the Chinese as if it's a garbage. This kind of increase in hostility and racial attacks, xenophobia against Africans in China is completely unacceptable. And we strongly condemn these xenophobic attacks against Africans in China. and demand answers from China, demands accountability, demands an end of this extreme cruelty being seen against Africans in China. Chinese must respect Africans the same way we respect Chinese that are living in Africa. We have had enough of these attacks of Africans. We have had enough of these humiliation of Africans in China, and say enough is enough. If they're going to continue doing this, then China should prepare enough planes to come and fly out of its 10 million citizens that are living in Africa, so that as we bring our Africans that are being persecuted in China home, the Chinese should also be coming to pick up their citizens from Africa, back to China where they came from. And if we do this, then we would have equalized what they're doing to us and brought justice, the kind of justice that every African deserves. We call upon the African Union to respond to these kind of racial by the UK scientists, and to also respond to the continued racial discrimination of Africans in China. China has failed to provide enough answers why it is discriminating against African citizens in China. In fact, China lied about what is going on, the racial discrimination of Africans in China, and several activists have debunked the lies. So time for China to start telling the truth. Let China tell us about the COVID-19, where it came from. They need to allow independent researchers into Wuhan to investigate the cause of this virus that is plaguing the entire world. And it all began in China. Because China remained silent, now we are suffering because of Chinese silence. The silence became a genocide that is now hitting the whole world, and China must be held accountable. China must pay for the kind of losses that the world is incurring at the moment. This is the only way that we can ensure that justice is done for the innocent people who have succumbed to COVID-19 and the kind of economic disruptions that the world is facing because of failure of China to disclose this pandemic early enough. They kept on lying and even silencing the scientists, but now it has exploded throughout the world, and thousands of people are dying every day. Africa needs to unite. We have very talented young people who can create health solutions. We have seen a lot of innovations throughout Africa, and this is what we need to encourage and support. We need to support our innovators so that we create all the technology that Africa needs for industrialization. Time for Africa to stop the self-hate. Let us love one another. Let us completely discard the ideology of tribalism, completely abandon nepotism, and start valuing each other. And time for us to come together. Let us unite all over the world. People of African descent are facing the same challenges: racial discrimination, neo-colonialism. There is also colonialism that is going on in West Papua, and the people of West Papua have suffered for too long, and they are suffering because of this division around the black community. We are not united in standing for the solidarity of West Papua, which has undergone a genocide by Indonesia. Over 500,000 black people in West Papua have been killed, but United Nations, the so-called world leader of human United States, has been on this because they are benefiting from the West Papua natural resources. West Papua is home to the world's largest gold mine, and it's this gold mine that is keeping people silent. They don't want to talk about the ongoing genocide in West Papua. They don't want to talk about the right for the indigenous people for self-determination. They have expressed unanimously their desire for self-determination, but we have seen West Papuan political activists being silenced. They're being silenced for carrying their flag and protesting peacefully, demanding their independence. That was forcibly taken away by Indonesia after they received it from the Dutch. That's the worst kind of experience for a newly independent nation to have been in. There is no any other nation that has experienced such magnitude of brutality and cruelty. So we need to stand in solidarity with West Papua. I was appointed to be the representative for the West Papua campaign in Kenya, and our goal is to work and increase the solidarity, encourage the African leaders to stand in support for West Papua independence and support the liberation struggle. We have the armed struggle going on, but they are receiving very little support. The same way Cuba supported Africa liberation struggle, we need to return that favor and support West Papua liberation struggle, support the freedom fighters in West Papua, so that this independence can be attained by all means necessary, even if it means guerrilla warfare and all kinds of tactics that the African freedom fighters employed to attain independence of African nations. This is the kind of spirit that we need in West Papua to ensure that no black nation is colonized anymore. In 21st century, we should not be having black nations under colonization. So I appeal to Africans, to all our followers around the world, to support the independence of West Papua. Keep on sharing our flyers. We created flyers under the hashtag Africa for West Papua. So let us unite in solidarity with our brothers. And this decade being the decade of people of African descent, this is our time to come together and start solving our own problems. Build a very strong economy that will be able to sustain Africa without heavy dependence on foreign aid. This foreign aid that Africa has been receiving has never been in Africa's interest. It has been a slavish relationship that we have had with the IMF, with the World Bank, and the only way to end up this servitude is by creating our own financial institutions to be able to support the Africa as a nation, create our own Africa Central Bank, and ensure that all kind of funding that Africa needs is within her. This is the only way that we can develop Africa as a prosperous, independent, and respected African nation. If we want to get into the first world economy, then the most important thing is the economic sovereignty. We must have one Africa currency, the one Africa Central Bank, and be able to have our own Africa Stock Exchange, where we are going to be trading the African currency, and so that it be the only means of exchange to all the trade that we have in Africa. And even with our partners, they'll be able to accept the African currency. This is the only way that we can have a prosperous Africa, and we can build United States of Africa by taking action towards the economic transformation and economic liberation of Africans as a nation and Africa as a people. Greetings, Amat Ndure, I can see you from Gambia. Thanks for joining. So in all our chapters, let us work to promote the single African nation, the single African nation vision, the United States of Africa, promote Pan-African ideologies, encourage Africans to start appreciating who they are. We need to appreciate ourselves, to love ourselves, and uphold the beauty of blackness, appreciate the nature that it created us, the originality of black identity. This is something that we need to thank our God. Whenever we wake up, we should take pride in our black identity. Take pride on how magnificently we were created, and stop the self-hate. Love our brothers as we love ourselves. Promote African values and principles. Uphold African culture and national heritage. Protect African history, and completely discard the Western version of African history, how they narrate African history. Completely disregard how they report African news, and be our own voices. We created the Africa My Story project to give an opportunity for Africans to tell their own stories. So you can submit your stories, submit your poems, and we'll be able to publish them on our website and also on our page. You can even submit creative videos focusing on specific issues that Africa is facing, and we'll definitely share it on all our platforms, and this way we'll continue inspiring the unification of Africa. So let us keep on supporting the United States of Africa. You can support us on Patreon so that we begin taking the action that you're asking for, because there is no project that can run just on air. We need the financial support that is required to ensure that all our objectives are implemented. So this is why the support of Africans in Africa and Africans in diaspora is very critical in promoting Pan-Africanism and inspiring a renewed spirit of African nationalism. We need to start seeing ourselves as a nation, and not just divided countries under Berlin Conference. We are bigger than the Berlin Conference, and the only way to crush it is to embrace the African nationality, embrace the African identity. This way we are going to win. We are going to overcome these colonial barriers and move forward a borderless Africa, the United States of Africa.